Welcome to the JRPG Canon, the ongoing project to document the first slice of a JRPG, talk about why it works, and what's fun about these games that we like so much. If you'd like a better intro as to the purpose and idea behind the series, go check out the first episode on Final Fantasy, listen to like the first 10 minutes, come back to this one, then do the other one, because this one should have been episode 1. So the intro to the series... Intro to the series is over there. Intro to the concept is right here. But I am Sam Allman, and joining me this week is the literal only person I could possibly think of to join me on an episode about Dragon Quest, noted Dragon Quest liker and vocal game design discusser, Tim Rogers.
Hello.
No, it's Maddy Grace. Could you imagine if I got Tim Rogers on episode 2? I feel it's my goal, and I feel it's accomplishable that I will get Tim Rogers on one of these, maybe my Wild Arms 5 episode. But
I mean, who else is going to want to talk about Wild Arms 5?
I know, it's literally only me and Tim Rogers that have played the game. But yeah, so This week we'll be discussing Dragon Quest. Super excited to do that. Maddy, tell me a little bit about you, even though if they've listened to any of the other podcasts, they know about you. But most importantly, your relationship to Dragon Quest.
My relationship to Dragon Quest is that when I was in some kind of school, I forget when exactly. Well, I think I might have been around 13 when Dragon Quest 8 came out. And if you recall Dragon Quest 8, it was a big deal. It actually managed to have some mainstream success in the West. It got heavily advertised and hyped. So anyone who paid any amount of attention to video games, you know, anyone who was a person who played Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy, was looking forward to Final Fantasy 12, Kingdom Hearts, Xenosaga, would be like, oh boy, Dragon Quest 8 looks so good. And I think it wasn't until that point that I thought I should get into this series. I don't know if I started reading Tim Rogers shit at that point or not, but I knew that he loved those games at some point. You know how it is when you're like a teenager. Order of events gets all mangled up. But anyway, point is, I, in typical Maddy Grace fashion, thought I should play the entire series from the beginning instead of playing Dragon Quest 8. What ended up happening was I played like Dragon Quest 1 and maybe even a bit of 2. I don't remember how far I got in any of these games. Maybe I didn't even beat Dragon Quest 1. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I don't know. At any rate, I did play a little bit of Dragon Quest before 8 came out. And then I played 8 and I loved it. And then at some point, after maybe reading more things, at some point I did definitely get into Tim Rogers and heard him write in his manifesto that Dragon Quest V is one of the greatest games of all time. So at some point and also that's when they started making those remakes for the DS, the Dragon Quest 4, 5, and 6 remakes for the DS, which are really, really, really good. So at some point, I wanted to save up money for something that I won't get into, and it was quite a bit of money. So I thought, I know a way to save myself some money and also to cut down on spending and also do something I want to do anyway. What if the only video games I play for the next year are Dragon Quest games? So for a year, or maybe even more than that, that was the only games I played, or at least new games. I didn't spend any money on any games besides Dragon Quest. So I emulated Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3, and then I DS'd Dragon Quest 4 and 5. And I didn't play 6 during that spree because 6 didn't come out until a little bit later. 6 came out, I think, when I was a freshman in college. And then I went and hit 7 summer after my freshman year of college or something. I blasted through 7. So basically, due to just my own decision, because I just felt like it, because I'm a fucking weirdo, decided to blast through the entire Dragon Quest series in a pretty short amount of time, and it completely revolutionized my life, basically. That's not even an exaggeration. It shaped my taste in games and my taste in art, but I think it also helped me realize, I don't know if it was during that year, but at least in between then and now, a lot of things, the Dragon Quest series has allowed me to learn a lot about myself actually as a human being, not just not just the video game. So that's my history. I didn't like grow up with the series as like a kid, anything. I mean, I guess I was a teen, but like I didn't play them when they came out, is what I'm saying, right? Only Dragon Quest 8. The rest of it was just my typical, like, as an intellectual, pretentious youngster, I thought I'm going to go back and play all these games. So I did. And because it's sort of an unusual thing, it's not something that immediately jumps out to you as a thing to do. That's why I'm always trying to spread the good word of Dragon Quest. Because
absolutely,
it's not the kind of thing that someone's going to, like, hey, I'm going to go play Dragon Quest 1 or 3 for no reason. That's not a thing that naturally would occur to someone to do unless someone encourages them to do it, right? Like, it's not like playing, you know, if you want to get into Souls games, that's easy. They just made one, and it's like the best game of all time, apparently, right?
Mhm.
And they just remade Dark Souls for the Switch, you know, all that shit like that. So, but Dragon Quest, people tend to find them intimidating. I don't know, Dragon Quest 11, people don't get. They just see it, they just don't get it. They're just like, it's some anime game, who gives a shit? And it's like, no, you don't understand.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm always preaching the good word of Dragon Quest, because I know that I cannot imagine the person I'd be if I hadn't played these games. So I want everyone else to, I want to spread the love.
Yeah, I similarly had like vague recollections of the series growing up. I owned Dragon Quest Monsters 2, Kobe's Adventure, or Kobe's Journey, or Kobe's whoever, for the Game Boy Color, and I remember getting pretty far into it, but not being able to figure something out. And I think later on in life, I realized I basically got to the Dragon Lord of that game. I got like to the very end, and that's why I couldn't beat it. But I never could beat it. But my best friend John had Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3 for his Game Boy Color, but he has little brothers, so all of his save slots were filled. So I couldn't play it. He just was like, dude, this game is freaking awesome. Look how cool it is. And I'm like, that indeed looks cool. And then couldn't play it. And then when Dragon Quest 8 was coming out, everybody said that it was the best RPG on the PS2, and it was fantastic, and I needed to play it, but nobody ever let me borrow it, and I couldn't afford my own copy at the time. So then I didn't even think about Dragon Quest as like existing for the next like 10 years, and until Maddy preached the good word of Dragon Quest and was like, dude, you need to play these. So I got Dragon Quest 1 through 3 on a sale on iOS, and I blasted through all 3 of them, and it changed my life forever. I now know that Dragon Quest is in fact the good RPG series, and everything else just tries to get close to that.
Also, I will mention just for today, I will say that we're playing Dragon Quest 1 today, also known as Dragon Warrior in English. And Sam wanted me to replay the game, or replay the first part of the game, and spoiler alert, I didn't. But here's the thing, I do not have to. I have probably played this game 10 times. It's not very long. Sometimes if you just get bored or if you're depressed or stressed, it's just like, yo, what if I booted up on my iOS and just fucking played it, man? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I played it on NES, which is more of a lift. You gotta set up your NES, you gotta set up your CRT. It's a slower paced game. I've still played on NES, I think, 3 distinct times, if not more. So, the later you go in the series, the fewer times I played them, because they're, you know, long,
much longer.
But 1, 2, and 3, I've all played multiple times, and also various versions of them. So, I did spend a lot of time today thinking about Dragon Quest and looking at stuff, and I spent all the time I was supposed to be playing it, doing things that weren't literally playing it. But anyway, I am fully qualified to talk about it today, and I wanted to say that just to express that just that these games are so easy to play, and most people who are, I'm not a weirdo here. I mean, okay, I am, but like, me and Sam aren't that unusual here. The reaction that you get from most people upon playing these games is that 2 years later, they're just as weird, as sicko as we are. And they play them regularly. That's how good they are.
Yeah. Also, another disclaimer is this game came out on the NES as Dragon Warrior, came out on the Game Boy Color with a new translation, has a fairly popular fan translation of the Super NES version, and then has a modern, fantastic, it's the one you should play translation on iOS. So I'm going to call things by various names from one of those 4 translations because I've played all of them. So don't hate me if you load it up and I say Dragon Lord and yours says Draco Lord, or I say Tantagel and yours says whatever the other one is.
Yeah,
so
some of the translation choices in these games, some of them are like your typical, like, oh, it sounds kind of the same, or like RL merger stuff with like Japanese language stuff. But sometimes it's like, no, the localizers made up a totally new word for this town. So like, just roll with it, man. If we see a town name you don't know, I mean, I'm going to say things like the second town instead of Galen Holm or whatever, right? So it's not that complicated. But yeah, just don't yell at us. You know, whatever.
Please. We probably just did it.
I mean, you can.
Yeah, that's fine. Please,
if you're going through some stuff, you know, you need someone to let it out. That's fine.
Yeah, actually, you can yell at us, but you have to do it in an iTunes review.
That's right.
Anywho, let's listen to some of that iconic Dragon Quest music, and then we'll talk about the history of this game. So, as I mentioned before, Dragon Quest should have been the first episode, and back when this was a series and a blog series, Dragon Quest did in fact come first, because it basically is the platonic ideal of what a JRPG is, and every other RPG can be summed up as Dragon Quest, but like Final Fantasy is Dragon Quest, but you have a customizable party. Ys is Dragon Quest, but you bump into enemies instead of turn-based battles. And Final Fantasy 14 is Dragon Quest, except it's multiplayer and your abilities are on cooldowns, and you can play for free up to level 60, including the award-winning Heaven Up Sword expansion.
That's goddamn right. Funny, real quick, good joke, Sam.
Thank you.
I will say there's a small caveat to that, which is that some of these games, for example, Final Fantasy, if you look at the release dates of these games, it is actually relatively not likely that Final Fantasy was inspired by Dragon Quest, which is very weird, because if you were to simply play Dragon Quest and then play Final Fantasy without looking at the release dates, it would be impossible to imagine that the latter was not influenced by the former. So it's a really funny, it's so weird to think that it actually is not the case. However, but all you gotta do is listen to the world map music of Final Fantasy 2 to know that they caught up as soon as they could on being influenced by Dragon Quest. So, regardless, regardless of any chronology based facts, facts. It is an incontrovertible fact from a vibes-based perspective, from a dialectical perspective, that Dragon Quest is that what everything Sam just said is true. So, I just wanted to make clear that like this is true on a much deeper level than just it came first. It's from a philosophical standpoint, from a design standpoint, and from a cultural standpoint, it cannot be overstated the degree to which the Japanese role-playing game started here.
Yes. But it did not come from nowhere. So Dragon Quest was released in 1986 by Enix Software. It was created by Yuji Horii, featuring art by then up-and-coming artist Akira Toriyama. It's easy to look back and be like, oh, they went out and hired the big famous Dragon Ball Z guy, but he was like barely started in that. In 1986.
All he made was Dr. Slump, which Dr. Slump is awesome, but yeah, they didn't get Dragon Ball guy to make Dragon Quest. They got Dragon Quest guy to make Dragon Ball.
Exactly.
Or rather, he got himself. I mean, no one got him to make it. He made it. But yeah, so he's actually usually Akira Toriyama is Dragon Quest guy. Hate to break it to y'all.
It's crazy. Featuring music by I almost made a joke, but it's insensitive, so I'm going to drop a note and tell Bernard to cut it out, but tell it to you anyways because it was funny. I was going to say, featuring music by famed dead Nazi Koichi Sugiyama.
I think you should say that. It's an important fact to understand about the series. Featuring music by famed dead Nazi Koichi Sugiyama. God rest his soul. I love his music. Also, dude sucked.
Dude sucked real bad. But
luckily I'm Universalist, so I believe that he eventually will go to heaven after purifying his soul.
Awesome. I am sure that he's going to fight Goku in the Home for Infinite Losers and get reformed by getting his ass kicked, because
that's right.
That's That's the good kind of justice, is get your ass kicked by Goku so good that you stop being a space Nazi. Anywho, so Hori Sensei had worked on a few games for the NEC family of computers, most importantly for this discussion on a graphical text adventure called the Portopia Serial Murder Case. This was one of those games that came out in between Zork and Monkey Island on the adventure game spectrum, where it would draw you a scene, but then it would type out a sentence or two of description, and you would type in what you wanted to do in simplified terms. So it wasn't quite point and click yet, but it was graphically represented on screen.
I want to briefly step in here to say I think I think this game deserves a slight bit more shout out. So I just want to be clear here. Yuji Horii did not just invent the Japanese role-playing game, he also invented the visual novel.
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't think that's an exaggeration. What I have read other people who know more than me say about Portopia Serial Murder Case is that is very much a thing that you can very easily say, that it invented the visual novel.
Nice.
Which is to say, it invented a specific Japanese spin on the text or graphical adventure, right? Which is really all a visual novel is. It's just you take that concept and take it in a certain direction. Also, the Portopia Serial Murder Case, like it says, it's a murder case. It's so advanced. It sounds like a modern indie game. It's a very short game that is super non-linear. You explore and you find out who committed the murder, and you can find out that it was any number of people. And if you get like the wrong evidence and come to the wrong conclusion and accuse the wrong person, then like that's the game's ending. Is it has like a bunch of different endings based on who you think did the murder. So it's this really, really innovative game, which, and this part I want to mention, has been cited by people such as, for example, Hideo Kojima as one of the games that like influenced him to want to like make video games. So like even fucking Metal Gear and the oeuvre of Hideo Kojima traces back to Yuji Horii. I know that the point here is to analyze video games, but if people come away with one thing, it's to know the name Yuji Horii. Because Christ Almighty,
Absolutely.
is he one of the greatest auteurs in the history of video games.
Definitely. So, when Nintendo released the NES, Enix wanted Portopia on it. They're like, this will be perfect for it. But you can't type in read book on a controller with only two buttons.
I've tried.
So they were like, Yuji Horii, port this, but make it work. So Portopia NES came up with a command menu where instead of typing go up, grab knife, you would pick items from your inventory, what you'd like to do with them, pick an action, select a target, things that are super familiar if you've played an RPG that uses a command menu. And I think this is really cool that the command menu that is basically what people think of for at least turn-based RPGs. I think it's awesome it came from adventure games, because before video games, what nerds did to have fun was to play tabletop games like D&D, and you had rules and dice and fighting, but the main gameplay was in your imagination with guidance from a DM. So all adventure games are people taking the DM player storytelling interaction of D&D and making a game out of it. And dungeon crawler RPGs, which are all the ones that existed before Dragon Quest, are the dice and dungeoneering aspects of D&D made into a video game. So Portopia, being an adventure game, creating the command menu that JRPGs need to exist, is a beautiful bit of Kismet, and I really like it.
If you think that our assertion that adventure games and JRPGs are both sort of, or RPGs in general, are both like two different sides of the same D&D coin, if you think that's maybe a little bit presumptuous to say, I would direct you to the works of Patrick Holloman of the Game Design Forum and the Reverse Game Design series of essays, where I don't know if he was the first guy to say it, but he has explored this idea in great detail. So he's the guy who made me aware of this concept being as true as it really is. You know what I mean? Because before that, I wouldn't have thought of adventure games and JRPGs as being cousins, but they are both historically, conceptually, vibe-wise, and materially, by the fact that the as Sam's about to say, the menu selection stuff in Dragon Quest, it's not just taken conceptually from Portopia NES. I believe the code is literally taken from Portopia NES. So
yeah, I believe it is. So yeah, so Wizardry and Zork already existed at this point, and they both took their parts of tabletop gaming and ran with it. But Hori Sensei was a fan of both, so he married the two. You have your exploration, town interaction, and story that from adventure games with the crunchy numbers and dungeoneering of dungeon crawlers, all tied nicely together under his stand-in for a dungeon master, the command menu. So thus Dragon Quest was born. He wanted his RPG to be accessible to the average Nintendo player who played games like Super Mario, and they weren't computer spreadsheet dorks. So they were filthy casuals, and he wanted casuals to have fun with his game. So he didn't want the focus to be rolling your dice, chasing the next big spell, doing more damage, but instead to emotionally invest yourself in your character and have your character grow alongside you. So he wanted to tell a coming-of-age story about a hero who explores dungeons and having the numbers be numerical ways to chart your progress through the story. Which is hilarious because by today's standards, Dragon Quest I has almost no story, but compared to Wizardry, whose story was only in the manual and was basically big dungeon, go win, Dragon Quest I is a work of literary genius.
Yeah, it's really funny. Like, you read him literally saying, like, we want the characters to get emotionally invested in this deep, interesting story, and you're like, what? I think the way to square the circle is to say it's like, this game is about expressing the feeling and the vibe of being a hero going on an adventure, the emotional space of it, not the facts of it. In a way, I've been playing a lot of Outrun this week just randomly, and just like the works of Yu Suzuki, it's like, is this game a imitation, a simulation of driving a car? No. But it is, in fact, I always like to joke that, I don't know if this is an original joke by me or if I got it from somewhere, but that Yu Suzuki's games are all they actually are all sims, where they are simulating the feeling of driving a cool, fast car, the emotional space of it. And Shinmu, it's the emotional space of being a teenager whose dad was murdered by villains. But yeah, I think this game is cousin to that. It is creating the emotional journey of what it might feel like to be a hero going on an adventure, including such things as the difference between bravery versus recklessness, right? Or cowardice versus wisely turning back and heading home. The sort of things you might need to pay attention to. I do think that its focus on making sure that your HP and MP are going to be enough to get you where you need to go, and the focus on stocking up on potions is an imitation of the idea of like the adventurer's focus on logistics and stuff. And of course, there's one more very major way in which this game metaphorically represents this concept that Sam's going to be addressing very soon. But yeah, that's how I square the circle of like, you're emotionally invested in the story that doesn't exist. No, You're emotionally invested in the formal structure of an adventure, absent the literal content of it. This is an extremely minimalist game. We need to be clear here. It's got 8 towns. It's got 5 towns in the whole game, and 8 dungeons, and I think 8 pieces of music in its soundtrack. This is a profoundly minimalist game.
Yeah. And it being so minimalist and being story light is awesome for this series where we focus on the gameplay and the fun factor, because a game that lives and dies on its gameplay loop being fun is a great start. So imagine that Maddy's and Bernard's schedules were reversed so that you heard this episode first, or just go back and listen to episode 1 after you hear us gush about Dragon Quest, which we'll start doing right now. So let's listen to some more Dragon Quest music and start actually walking through the game. So you start the game in Tantagel Castle with a text box already up. King Lorik informs you of your quest to kill the Dragon Lord, and that's it. You're let loose on the world. Well, you're let loose on the room because it's locked and you have to find a way out. I really enjoy Egoraptor's video about Mega Man X, and his concept of conveyance in that Mega Man X video is super good. Go watch it if you haven't. And that concept is exemplified by this locked room puzzle they drop you in at the very beginning. So first thing you probably do is mash some buttons, press the A button, and your command menu pops up. It says talk, spell, status, item, stairs, door, search, and take. The king in his opening dialogue tells you to talk to the guards and take what you find in the chests. So 2.5, 3 of those verbs have been told to you to do to make your way progress. So you talk to the guards and you get the world's first ever side quest. Don't quote me on that, but I'm sure it is. One of the guards mentions that the princess has also been kidnapped. So you need to go kill the Dragon Lord, but also the princess has been kidnapped, and he begs you to bring her back. But she's completely missable, which is kind of cool. So you search the treasure boxes and you take their contents, some gold, a torch, and a magic key. If you talk to the other guard, he says you have to use the magic key to leave the room. So you item a magic key at the door and make your way down the stairs into the castle. Everything but spells and status you have now used before leaving the door.
Fun thing about Magic Key, Magic Key is a very important structural element in this game. But after you use this one Magic Key, you will not get another one till well after the point in which we are going to stop discussing the game.
Yes.
So they're just giving you a little heads up about the concept of a Magic Key, even though for structural reasons, it absolutely has to not really be part of the game until quite a bit later.
Mm-hmm. Now that you're in the castle, you are a Dragon Quest master, so you're good at exploring. So you go off and explore the castle at large. It's just like the throne room, but bigger. It has stuff to look at, NPCs to talk to, where you can get lore about the world, which definitely was not in Wizardry. Like, you can maybe say Wizardry had a town with some NPCs and their shopkeepers, but there was definitely no NPCs to talk to get lore.
I want to make a this is actually I think an important enough correction to actually make. I apologize. Ultima had also come out at this point, which is very important.
Okay, so
it's very important because not just because Ultima obviously had things like lore and NPCs, but more importantly, Ultima has a top-down graphics, whereas Wizardry is first person and is all about dungeon crawling. And Yuji Horii has said in some interview, I'm not going to go pull up a citation right now, that he combined both of those things on purpose. He liked top-down navigation better than first-person navigation, so the game is top-down. But when you're in a dungeon, it mimics the limited sight of something like Wizardry with its limited vision cone. But also, when you go into battle, the battles are in first person, which was influenced by the visual design of Wizardry. So this game is taking influence from two distinct JRPGs, two distinct Western RPGs, also probably shit like Temple of Apshai or whatever, as well as Portopia.
Yeah. I actually had forgot that Ultima existed like as a concept until you said it just now. So that's what wasn't in my notes.
Ultima sucks shit. Fuck those games. I'm sorry. I'm sure someone likes them, and maybe one day I'll be able to play them. But the old ones are too clunky even for me. And I love esoteric clunky shit. It's not that it's too clunky. It's that I don't see anything else to appreciate besides the clunk.
Yeah, I don't want to play them only for the fact that they decided graphically that when you walk up, you don't see the characters, but you see them walking up sideways, and it doesn't make sense, and I hate it. It's stupid. But anywho, so another important thing that you find in the castle are a bunch of locked doors with no more magic keys to unlock. Keys are consumable in this game, so you can't get through any of these doors. And these doors kind of are the core of what make JRPGs, even more so than the few CRPGs I've made. So this is me pulling it out of my ass. You probably can prove me wrong. No, no big deal. But most JRPGs, you come into a place and somebody's like, you want to do the thing, but the North Cave is blocked by thick ice, so you'll need the fire rod. So you see your goal, you know what your goal is, and you have a new world state to explore to find a way to get there. And that kind of push and pull growing is very JRPG to me.
Wow, Sam, it's funny that you say that because you're wrong. No, okay. I'm joking, but I'm actually glad that you worded that precisely the way that you did because it lets me jump off of something I wanted to discuss here. So, there's two main points. So again, this is sort of a reboot of this series that Sam has been doing, and he just invited me on to contribute. And there's two main contributions I want to make here, aside from my hilarious jokes. And by hilarious, I mean annoying. Anyway. But my first thought is I want to talk a little bit more about these keys because what Sam's describing is what I would call, again, I didn't invent this concept, sort of like player-driven design or player-driven scenario or player agency-driven. In other words, the flow of how the game works is controlled by the player's own agency and, more importantly, the character's own agency. Of course, this is an illusion because like any video game, players' agency operates within the framework of the game's design, which is designed by the designer. But my point is that the player progresses from one scenario of the game to the next because they and the character chooses to do so, diegetically and narratively. So, Lorik or Erdrick or whatever decides I'm going to go over here, and so does the player. For example, in this game, the Dragon Lord's in his castle, right? You don't see the Dragon Lord until the end of the game. The Dragon Lord, the villain, never does anything in the game. He's just going to sit there and wait for you to go get him. So, in a very real sense, Dragon Quest I is not just the first Japanese role-playing game. It's also, if you want to be a little cheeky, the first open world or sandbox game. Just like games like Breath of the Wild or Dark Souls or Elden Ring, the game doesn't arbitrarily gate your progress in any way. But it obviously does. The game gates you because of its difficult enemies. You know, you can't go to the places that are harder. Is that different than making... So that this is what I'm getting in about what Sam said. Sam mentioned how the core JRPGs is you can't go through the cave because of the thick ice, so you need the fire rod. Here's the thing. That started off not being much of a thing. Keys are the only instance of that in this game. And fun fact, you only need keys... you never need keys to explore the world map. You can go every single place in this game without any gating, assuming that you don't get clobbered by the enemies. You only need the keys mostly for getting goodies and treats, but also for two specific plot-required items. There's one town where a key opens a door to a dungeon that you have to go to eventually, and in another town, Kentagao Castle, actually, the key opens the door to go to a secret area to get a plot-necessary item. So what I'm saying is the player is in the seat of how the game's agency works. Later in the progressive JRPGs, you'll see that this changes. You'll see that villains start to appear and do things. Things happen to the players instead of the players, or to the characters, instead of the characters doing things. Think of the classic example of what's the word? The name of the game. Son of a bitch. Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic. You're in control. You're in the command seat. You go to each of the 4 planets and you do your little quest. But then, Sam, what happens after the second quest?
In Knights of the Old Republic? I do.
In between the second and third planets, yeah, or third and fourth.
I don't remember.
You get fucking tractor beamed by the bad guy's ship, and now you're captured. And you have to go through this whole scenario, right? You didn't choose to do that. It happened at you. Same thing happens in stuff like Final Fantasy IV. Like, oh, we're going on a ship. Oh, no, we had a shipwreck, right? So what I'm saying is, as you progress through the JRPG series, you'll see more and more that instead of the player and their decisions to go this way or that way being what drives the pacing of the narrative, it is instead a series of more narrative literary events where because a character is sad and wants to go and, say hi to their mom in their hometown, or because the villain kidnapped or murked somebody, or because of blah 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 blah, that is what drives the narrative. And of course it'll be like, oh, because of a plot twist, we now have to go to this town, and coincidentally the bridge to that town, earlier it was broken, but they fixed it now. Coincidentally, right? So that's all I wanted to mention, is that it is a very gradual process over the course of the entire life of the Japanese role-playing game genre, from where we are now, where there's almost zero gating, except for the little bit with the keys. And also you do need 3 plot-relevant items to get to the final dungeon. But other than that, it's just like, fucking go for it, dude. You're in command here. To something like, for example, Final Fantasy 13, which would be a great example of exact opposite of this concept. Cool. I wanted to lay that out there because this is the very first game we're talking about, and this, I think, is an important concept in JRPGs in general.
Yeah. So, specifically in this game, they do this a lot, where you see your goal, you know what your goal should be, but you can't do it yet. You don't have magic keys, so you can't get through these doors, so you have to do something else. And the moment you step out of the castle, it does it again. You can see the final boss's dungeon from the beginning of the game. You can't get there. Getting there is real hard. It's the whole rest of the game, but you can see your goal right at the very beginning, and your driving force as you go through the game is figuring out how to get it.
Yep. Also, I'll say a slightly more humble, but I think even better example. If you walk a little bit to the left, if you just walk a little west from your starting point, you'll see a cave that you also can't get to. You can't get to because it's on the other side of mountains, but it's almost more humble, because instead of needing 3 magical plot items, that cave, literally, you can go get there anytime you want. You'll just die before you get there. So there's another example of like a bit of a softer, you can't do that yet.
And so out in the world map, there's a town nearby where you can go in, talk to some NPCs, and be unable to afford weapons or armor. One of the NPCs there tells you to beware of bridges because harder monsters wait on the other side. All of the rest of them say, go east. So when you make your way north a little bit, you probably will come across some slimes, a super simple blue happy face with 3 HP. You kill it, you get some experience, you feel good about yourself, and you keep going. But when you go north a ways, you have a choice to go east over a bridge or west to some desert and some mountains. The king and all of the NPCs said that the princess and the Draker Lord are to the east, so you know that's where you want to go, but there's a bridge there. So if you remember that NPC, you'll go west, but if you don't, the game does something super cool. It kills the fuck out of you, hard, dead, brutally. But instead of a game over screen, the game instead just safely teleports you back to the castle, where the king says, death should not have taken thee, I will give thee another chance. You lose a bit of your gold, but you're otherwise unscathed and ready to try again.
You do lose, in the original version of the game at least, half your gold, which is a little bit of a brutal hit, actually, and that does, for the record, that is true for the entire Dragon Quest series all the way up to 11. But later in the game, in the series, they'll do a thing where you can deposit your gold into a bank, which keeps it safe. So then death is even less of a big deal. It's like you lose the pocket change you happen to be carrying around at the time. At this point, it actually is pretty brutal. And the brutality of losing half your gold when you were saving up 600 gold to get a new shield or whatever is necessary in order to teach the player, because, as I mentioned, this game is very player driven, and like Sam said, you can either go east or west. Well, if the punishment isn't very severe, then you're not going to think hard about whether it's better to go east or west. But as Sam also said, you don't lose any experience points, which is the part that matters.
Yeah. So instead of permadeath like you have in Rogue, or a hard game over like you have in Wizardry, you instead have something that's very much fits in with the coming of age theme that Hori Sensei wanted to convey. You have setbacks just like you do in life, but you can never lose. You can only move forward. You'll always have a gained experience, which thankfully is a number on your status screen. That number only ever goes up. You are only ever making progress. It's not just the player that learns from his mistakes, it's the character too. And this is my favorite thing about Dragon Quest, and I feel it really gets to the center of what Dragon Quest is about.
Yeah, it's a simple. It's almost a boneheadedly simple metaphor. Like literally in life, you have setbacks that may lose you literal gold or whatever, but you have learned from the experience. Like nowadays, experience points are just so abstracted to just be like they're just there because the game would be boring if the designers give you all the cool spells right at the beginning. So they just kind of have to have experience points. You see this. I mean, every game has XP now, not even just RPGs. And they've gotten way far away from the original point of them, which is that it is very literally a metaphor about life experience. Not even like you're good at swinging swords, but like you're a better person is what's growing here. And I'm going to come back to this point later because remember I had two main ideas for this episode, and I've hit one of them. I'll come back to this later, but the player almost definitely is also gaining experience, not just the character. There's a lot to learn about this game. Even though it's very simple, there is a lot of learning to do. So if you're playing it properly, you will have actually learned some things from your death that will help you not die as much next time.
Yeah. Fun fact. So when I was playing this on the NES to write the script for the original video that these notes are based on, I didn't get any encounters whatsoever until I walked all the way to reach Cole. I was just trying to walk over and get killed by a scorpion so I could have the B-roll of being a level 1 noob character getting destroyed by a scorpion. But instead, I accidentally got all the way to the end of the section I was trying to play.
Which, to be clear, that is insane. That is absolutely ridiculous. This game has a
RNG. Very high encounter rate.
Yeah. Well, more importantly, this game handles encounters differently in later games. Quote unquote random battles aren't really random at all. Usually some kind of hidden counter that counts up, and when it hits its limit, you have a battle. And there's usually some RNG, but still it's going up. This game, I should have pulled up the code for this, but it literally is something like every time you take a step, it does a roll to see if you have a battle or not, which means you can just never have one, or you can have a battle every step you take for 6 steps in a row. I don't have a deep thought about that. It's something that it's just a fun fact about this game that makes it really unique and cute, and they stopped doing it with later games probably because it was a bit too wonky for the average Joe. Unfortunately, again, this is one of the few design elements of the game where I'm like, yeah, I don't have any thoughts about how this quote contributes to its themes. It's just kind of a fun. It is fun though, and I like that it is this way.
Yeah, and I like that I got the super lucky one.
Actually, yes, I do. We'll come back to it later.
Okay, cool. So, unless you get super lucky like me, you'll make it like 2 steps across the bridge and get smacked down by a scorpion. So that is another one of, like Maddie said, these soft locked doors. You can't survive scorpions or magicians right now, so you have to look somewhere else. People like to say that this makes Dragon Quest grindy, but it's not. This is not a boss at the end of the dungeon that's suddenly super duper hard and you have to stop playing the fun part of the game to go and punch boars for 10 minutes to then be able to get ready to face the boss. There's a whole other direction to go. There's more stuff to do. This is a locked door that you have to bust through. It is not a artificial wall that you have to just grind through.
Yeah, saying that dying halfway through a dungeon and saying that fighting all the monsters in Dragon Quest is grinding is like saying that having to jump over the Goombas in Mario is grinding. Like this, yeah. This is the game as she is played. It's the point, and you're either going to die or not, depending on the choices you make. But either way, you make progress, and the only real choice is what kind of progress you make. And what I mean progress is, look, if you're at a certain level with a certain set of experience and you get to a dungeon that has say 5 floors, there's no fucking way you're getting all the way through that dungeon, because it's like I could just look at your character sheet and look at what level you are, what equipment you have, and be like, yeah, there's no way you're getting past the third floor. Oh yeah, in these dungeons, they actually have stronger enemies as you progress through floors instead of the same enemies the whole way. Cool fact about this game: most games don't do that. They should. What I'm saying is, if by looking at your characters, there's no goddamn way you're getting past the third floor, then there's only two options: you die on the third floor, or you get to the third floor, turn back, and get home safely. There's pros and cons to either method. Do you want a bit more XP and maybe find some loot, or do you want to not lose half of your gold? Either way, you're just playing the game. It's just the game as she's played.
Yeah. So since east is too hard, you instead go west, and it's easier, but not easy. You'll still probably die, but it will be close when you die instead of just being smacked down by the hand of God. So you'll keep gaining experience, and slowly these slimes that used to take 3 turns to kill now just take 1. Or Drakes that used to be a 50-50 shot on if you would survive, you now take down like it's no big deal. You might even get a spell and start just waylaying dudes. So getting back out to where you were when you die or decide to go back, or both, is never a slog. It always just reinforces the idea that your character has grown, and now you have proof, because you'll get stomped by a scorpion. You're like, oh shit, that was really hard. But then you come back, and everything to get you back to that scorpion is now so easy that it barely even counts. And so your sphere of influence keeps getting bigger and bigger, and it's really fucking cool.
Yeah, and you might say, okay, so doesn't that just mean that as your sphere of influence gets bigger and bigger, there's a longer gap between dying and trying again? Like, imagine, if you're not even having a challenge at all until you get to the second continent, then one might say that if you die and go back to the start of the game and have to go to the second continent again, everything while you're traveling through the first continent to get to that bridge, all that is just like a waste of time. Like if you were playing Mario and it said, buddy, you got to wait 2 minutes before you get to play the game again. But no, because as I'll come back to later, you're gathering info and you're learning about the game and yourself as you make this journey. It's a less dangerous journey than before, but there's still things to learn that will build your experience, both literally as a character and as a human being. That way, when you get back out there, you're a little bit more ready.
So, as you make your way west, you see a cave in the desert. So, of course, you go inside. You're a pro at exploration now, so you gotta see what's inside. Psych, you can't see what's inside. It's completely dark. But you did get a torch at the beginning of the game, so you use it, but you still can't see shit, just the 8 squares around you. And since walls in Dragon Quest are at least 1 square thick, you can't ever see on the other side of a wall. All you can see is that if you're in a dead end or if there's space to move, but you can't plan ahead. So you have to keep a mental map or a paper map, if you want, of the dungeon to be able to see where you're going.
Yep. And I want to say there's another thing. You may have never heard of this before because you never played a game like this. This is a Dragon Quest thing that very few games have ripped off of, which is insane. You think they would have ripped off of this? It's a great idea. Just to help you visualize it in case you're not really getting it. Like when we say dark, we don't mean like film dark. We mean the screen is black, except for a 3x3 square with you in the middle. So you can only see a fucking little bit. And I will say later you get a spell, where instead of a 3x3, it's it's 7x7. So you get to see significantly farther. Also, that torch does run out of juice. The torch burns out. So it's a fun little. Dungeon navigation is a way less trivial thing in this game than it is in most other RPGs.
And this dungeon is very maze-like, but the rest of the dungeons in the game, besides the final dungeon, aren't really at all. So this was a really cool way to make the first dungeon hard without it being dangerous. There are no random battles in this first dungeon, so you still have to overcome something as a human being. But you can't just grind your way through this thing. By taking the danger away, it forces you to learn dungeoneering, and it's pretty cool.
Yep. And once again, that is a level of like Mario 1 degree of like tutorializing, like that just blatant, like that everyone's read in one of the 20 different articles that make the same point, where it's like, oh, you see a Goomba and you can't kill it, but then you get a mushroom, or you see a block and you can't break it, but then you get a mushroom and you can break it. This is like that degree of obvious, but yet games don't do it. So like for a game that's known as being hard, it's phenomenal that the first dungeon doesn't have enemies in it. Like they teach you fighting enemies and then they teach you dungeons, and they don't teach them at the same time because they're being very, very nice to you, actually, which is very cool. And yeah, so we're still in tutorial mode, right? It's not for a while that we get a real ass dungeon.
At the bottom of the maze is the tablet where Erdrick, your grandpappy's grandpappy, tells you how to complete your quest and seal away the Dragon Lord. There are 3 major towns with each with a MacGuffin that you need to snag, and once you get them all, you can cross into the Dragon Lord's castle and give him what for. So you continue your way further west, and you make it to Galenholm, your first non-castle town. There are no cutscenes in this game, so in later games, if you're lost, you might just stumble around until a cutscene plays and then you know you're making progress. That never happens at all in this game. Like, you walk up to the final boss and you interact with him with the talk button, just like he was an NPC. There's no cutscene at all in this game. Technically, when you die, the text box pops up automatically, so you could maybe say that there is a death cutscene, but there is no other scripted moment at all in the whole game. So, well, I guess if you save the princess, I think there's some
a few scenes that could very, very, maybe you can make an argument that it counts as a scripted scene, but like pretty much everything in the game is made with the building blocks of you click on talk to someone and then a dialogue box appears. You know what I mean? Like that's the game.
Yeah. So you can talk to all of these NPCs, but you'll have no clue if you're in the right place or not. If you're like I was and you went the other way to Cole and didn't get any monsters, you might think that you're supposed to be in Cole before you technically are, because there's nothing to tell you either way. But in Galenholm, in the second town, my second favorite thing about Dragon Quest comes into play. All of the items in the shops sell at the same price in every single town in the game, but each inn is more expensive than the last one. This one being 5 times as expensive as the inn back in Tantagel. So you have to ask yourself, do I spend like a third of a longsword to stay at this inn, or do I walk back all the way to stay at the cheaper inn? Or do I press forward and get killed anyways? Do I buy a bunch of items so that I've liquidated my assets, and then it's no big deal if I die and keep pushing forward? And so expanding your sphere of influence and choosing when to go back is the main loop of this game. Is like you're always just, it's like a roguelike, but where instead of player skill, you get farther and farther each time. It's like in game, your character also can get farther and farther each time. Like you have to decide what your run is and if you're turning back or dying to start your run over.
Yeah, I also will say for this first town, it is never the right idea to stay at this inn. Like later in the game, the inns are so far away from your starting point that it's like, yeah, I don't want to just go all the way back and then come all the way back again just to stay at the inn. But like with Galenholm, it's like, dude, the castle's right there, man. Like,
there.
You're really silly if you're blowing all that money to stay at the inn to save yourself a very brief trip home. But yeah. Also, one thing I want to mention here is that Sammy, I think you actually skipped over this. I apologize if you didn't, but I don't think I heard you say this. Very important thing in this. Oh no, you did say it, but I don't think you quite harped on it enough. When you die and come back with all of your whatever, you always come back to the starting point of the entire game. So the game is always a series of trips out from your starting point in whatever direction you feel like going, in a rather tree-like branching. Like, yeah, at first you can go right or left, but then after you go left, there's like you can then go down or loop around to the right again. Like there's, it branches where you go after that. And then if you die, you come all the way back. And that allows you to reset and think, maybe I'll just not go that direction again, right? It's very important the game does that. But anyway, what I wanted to mention is when I was in college, I wrote an essay about this game where I made the claim that pretty much the only real agency the player even has in this game is the decision to turn around and give up. And the reason is because the battle system is so simplistic that you wouldn't really say you're exerting agency in playing it. Like you're hitting fight. It's one-on-one battles. You're hitting fight. You're hitting spell. You're doing a calculation to see what's the best move to use with the tiny amount of strategy that you have. But really, your decision is paying enough attention to your character to know when is probably time to call it a day. Because the punishment, again, for getting owned is enough that you don't want to. Not enough to make you want to holler and turn the game off, but enough that you say, oh, damn it, I should have fought one less bad guy. Then I would have made it home. Home. So that was, and that's fun because making this decision requires a lot of paying attention. You have to analyze what's going on, get a feel for how you're doing, and get a feel for how good you are likely to continue doing. There's also a lot of randomness, so sometimes you might make what seems like a good decision, but then get owned anyway. Or you might make a bad decision and press on when you shouldn't have, and then it turns out okay, and you feel really good. Yuji Horii is famously a big gambler. So you get a lot of that here. So anyway, that was my thesis originally. I think there's some truth to it. However, I have since revised my opinion on what the main point of this game is, and it is not this. However, this is still pretty important.
Yes. So from Galenholm, if you continue west, you hit the coast, so you have to make your way south. But on your way south, there's another bridge. This one is even scarier than the other one. It hits way harder. I think you actually hit like iron scorpions. You're like, well, if regular scorpions kick my ass, these iron scorpions are going to eat me. So
you do in fact clear out, I think, almost the entire right. I think you clear out almost the entire east path of the game before you go across this bridge. If you're going in the strict, what is actually going in order of where the strong enemies are. So. When I was a kid, for the record, I was too dumb to understand this because I could tell the enemies were harder, but I don't think I could recognize that they were significantly harder than the enemies to the east, which were just harder. So I was like, wow, big difficulty spike, huh? So I pushed through. Eventually, I realized I was being freaking stupid and went the other way, but it actually took a while.
So yeah, you're like, well, iron scorpions suck, so maybe since I'm kicking Draki's and Ghost's ass now, I can probably take a scorpion. So you go back to the previous bridge, cross it, and you're right. You can handle scorpions and magicians. Again, just barely. They're hard, but now you're awesome, so it's okay that they're hard. So you push through and you make it to Cole, the third town, and there's a puzzle to complete for the magic flute. You can buy some more items. This time you get options for better and harder hitting ones, and you can stay at an even more expensive inn. South of Cole, you come to the first true dungeon of the game. It's just a short transitionary dungeon that bridges the gap between two landmasses, but it still puts everything you've learned so far to the test. You have to manage your health, your MP, your items. You have to mentally map out the dungeon's layout, and you have to ask yourself at every turn, I'm boned, but would I be more boned to turn back or try and push through and risk half of my gold? It also has another locked door that you still can't afford to get through, so you have to add it to your mental map of things to check out later. Spoiler, that's where the princess is, so come back and save her after you get a key.
Yeah,
she'll thank you for it.
Weird structural thing about this game. Well, yeah, after you get to so again, there's a certain point in this game where you become able to buy magic keys. At that point, you've entered a whole new world. You've entered post-key instead of pre-key. In this game, they're consumable, so you do have to buy multiple of them, which is annoying, and you run out, you gotta go buy more. But the fact that they're available means that the game has shifted. You can get them as opposed to them not being available. As soon as the next game, they just make it where once you get a key, you just have the key now. So that shows that the structural element of now that you have the key, you can go more places is a lot more important than the fact that they're consumable items. So they just got rid of the consumable part. But yeah, so one thing I want to get into is after you get the key, you might try to beat the princess. She's guarded by what I'll just go ahead and call the game's first boss, depending on what you want to consider a boss. It's insanely hard. So there's a fun, weird little thing where the game is presenting you with a goal that is right in front of your face. And you just have to ignore it until at some point later in the game you think, I should probably go save that princess. I've literally walked past her in this tunnel dozens of times, just waving, saying, hey, princess, I still can't kill the dragon. You're just going to have to keep chilling. I'll come back later, though, I promise.
So eventually you emerge victorious on the other side, and you have now really and truly experienced Dragon Quest. You're about halfway done with this very short game, and you could and probably should play the rest of it. But this will covers the basics of everything. It covers world map exploration, which is the main game of this game. You've experienced death and then lived to tell the tale. You've run into many different doors and many different keys to get through them, both real and figurative, and you have experienced the true bliss of number go up. And
which is not a typo, Google.
Yes, my notes are like, don't you mean numbers go up? And I'm like, that is not it. Number go up. Normally at the end of these episodes, I request feedback on if I didn't play enough of the game. Did I not touch on an important system? Did I not actually finish the tutorial? But because I've beaten this game, I get to comment first under the YouTube video. I didn't cover the fact that there are only 3 bosses in this game, and both of the first 2 are just in-game mobs that are put way early with no stats different. In some of the remakes, the stats are different, but I'm talking about the NES. Their stats are not different at all. I didn't cover how cool it is that when you save the princess, your sprite changes to be you actually carrying her all the way until you take her back to the castle, which is super cool. And I didn't cover the victory lap that we reference on the main show every single time we get to the end of a game. And I didn't touch on how great magic feels in this game and how when you get Sizzle, you basically destroy everything and feel completely untouchable. And it's super awesome. But like I said, the game's about 8 hours long and we've already done half of it. So go get it on iOS, spend a weekend playing it, then download 2, spend a weekend playing it, then download 3, spend maybe a little more than a weekend playing through that, and change your life.
Yeah. In case you're curious, Dragon Quest 3 is an absolute goddamn masterpiece. And ever since the word, it's one of the greatest video games ever made. Dragon Quest 1 and 2 are a little bit more like, if you play them, you'll appreciate 3 better. Now, I do think 1 is 100% worth playing. It's fantastic. I think it's also an absolute masterpiece. 2 is over a slog, but if you liked 1, you're going to be more than capable of getting through 2, even though it's not quite as good. But all that is to say, I'm not trying to say 1 isn't great, because it is and you should play it. But if you play it and like it, or if you just really, really don't want to believe me, at least play Dragon Quest 3 for the love of Christ.
Yeah. Dragon Quest 3 is fan-fucking-tastic. But let's listen to one final Dragon Quest track and then talk about our final thoughts. Almost played the entire Dragon Quest OST at this point.
There's not a lot of songs in it. I want to share one final thought, which is a bit more of a spiel. It won't be too long, don't worry. But it's what is my actual thesis about this game, right? And I think that this is my thesis about not just this game, but like not all JRPGs, but a lot of JRPGs. And basically, this is the main appeal of any game that intentionally tries to do the thing I'm about to say, which is when you're playing Dragon Quest game, what is I want to draw a distinction between 2 terms, and game designers out there, especially if you're like academic, I have a PhD in the theory of play, please don't at me. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff right now, okay? I'm coming from a much more lay perspective, though I do I like that stuff, but whatever. I want to draw a distinction between what I'll call a game and an activity. What I mean by that is, if you say, if you bust out Monopoly, you're saying, let's play a game. If you say, let's play patty cake, it's an activity. If you say, let's take a walk around the lake, that's an activity. Now, again, ludologists out there can say walking around the lake can be a game. Sure, okay, whatever. But it's an activity. You do it because it's fun. It's pleasurable. You don't have really a goal. You mostly just doing it, right? It's the act itself. Playing the piano, playing a musical instrument is much more of like an activity. Eating food, right? So this game, I think a lot of games are really more like activities, and I don't mean that to denigrate them. In fact, I mean that to defend them against people who come from that game design standpoint and say, where's the game? Oh, here's a great example. Candyland. Candyland is not a game because it's 100% deterministic. The players make 0 choices throughout the entirety of the game. It's RNG that tells you what you do, right? However, if you like playing Candyland, I ain't gonna knock you because it can be fun to see how the randomness plays out. Mm-hmm. It's funny to see that the person who was ahead the entire time then had to go all the way back to the beginning of the game because they drew a bad card. It's funny that someone's stuck in the molasses swamp and they've been here for 36 turns. Sorry, Larry from Larry Boy from VeggieTales. That's funny. It's like a little toy that you wind up and you see what happens. Is it an activity you participate in? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of Dragon Quest is an activity that you participate in. And the activity is this. The activity is paying attention. The activity is getting to know the game. What I mean is, it's time to talk about the battle system. So when you're fighting someone, you look, you've only got one action. You hit attack. You hit the enemies, they hit you. Who hits first depends on your speed, although it's actually depending on your defense. Is that stupid? Yes. Don't worry about it. It's been that way all the way till Dragon Quest IV, I think. But that's all it is. But so when you first start playing, if you're fighting a slime, you just hit attack, and they hit attack, and you hit it until you're done. You can hit run away, and you do have to do a little bit of a game there where you're doing risk and reward. Is running away going to work or not? But really, there's not much game there, right? But what else are you doing? You're paying attention to how much health the slime has. It doesn't tell you how much health the slime has, but if you do 1 HP of hits and it takes you 3 hits to kill it, you know it has 3. Now, if your third hit does 2, that slime could have 3 HP, or it could have 4. You don't know. It's either got 3 or 4. Every time it attacks you, you're paying attention to how much damage on average is this thing doing to me. Is it doing 1 every time? Is it doing between 3 and 5? And you're collecting info. Now, when to get farther in the game, the first real interesting enemy, and I am going to stop after this one, I promise. The first interesting enemy in the game, really, is the Draki. So you fight the Draki in the desert, and it's got 2 moves. It can attack, or it can cast a spell. It can cast Sizz, or Hurt, if you're playing the original version of the game. Hurt, so I'm going to get the numbers a little wrong here. This is the part where I should have refreshed my memory. I apologize, but I believe that of course, it depends on your defense stat, of course. But when you first fight them, a Draki's probably going to do something like 2 or 3 damage per hit to you, and you probably have something like 20 health, 20 HP, maybe even more like 30. Its spell does like 10. I think it's actually an RNG that goes from like 7 or 8 all the way up to like 13, but it's probably doing like fucking 11. And it's RNG whether it does it or not. I don't remember the percentage, but it's a certain percentage. In fact, it's important. I don't remember the percentage. So eventually, you got to fight a Draki, and every time you play it, you're gathered. If the Draki attacks you 4 times, and 3 of those times it hit you, and the 4th time it casts a spell, what is your brain now thinking? Okay, so it casts a spell about 25% of the time. Now, that might not be true. It could have been the RNG happened to make it do fewer spells than it could have, or more. But that's all you have to go on, right? Next time you fight a Draki, you get a little more info about how often it's going to cast that spell. And when you go to fight it, your agency is, and here's your agency. Your agency is, say you have 8 HP left. You might think, do I want to run away or do I want to hit it again? Is it going to cast that spell? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Should I use my healing spell? Should I use my healing spell or not? Should I use my hurt spell? And that's the main thing, by the way. You might think, oh, I used a hurt spell, but the hurt spell cost MP, and hitting it costs no MP. But if you hit it, and then it just hits you, and then you hit it again, then you did a good job. You didn't use any MP. But if you hit it, and then it casts a spell on you, it just did so much damage to you that you would have been better off casting a spell to kill it before it casts a spell on you. That would have saved you MP. It would have actually, you spend MP to prevent damage to then save MP. Now, how to make and I'm landing this plane, I promise. All of these numbers are not given to you. That's the most important thing here, except for how much damage things do. None of the percentages are given to you. None of the enemy HP counts are given to you. Most of your own stats, the calculations, how they work, are not given to you. This isn't like a game like Destiny, where every time you shoot the enemy, little numbers pop up saying how much you did, which for the most part I generally hate. Though there are games where that's the right call, like maybe Destiny. So funny example. But there's a lot of games that do that where it's a bad idea, for the record. Like most RPGs that have turn-based systems and show you the enemy's health bar. It's not a good idea, because gathering this info subconsciously and just by paying attention allows you to develop not factual, 100% known theories of what to do, but probabilistic theories. I feel like it's probably the right call to do this because of how this bad guy generally tends to work. I think it's probably got about 3 HP left, though I'm not sure. I'm forming predictions and then testing those predictions, testing those theories via further experimentation. That is the primary activity of this game. It is paying attention to the game. And it's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like taking notes in class. You ever take notes during a lecture and you have your own preferred method of taking notes, and it feels good to know that the way you developed taking notes is a good way of taking notes? Or if you're in a relationship with someone and you pay a lot of attention to them because you love them, and then later you manage to get them a present, which is something that, like a random, really, really deep cut that they mentioned one time, and then they feel really special because you showed your love, because you showed that you're paying attention. That's how this game is. You form a relationship with this game's world and its enemies and its algorithms by paying enough attention to be able to get to know them. And that is a fascinatingly exciting and invigorating activity that you partake in. And yes, it does feed into the actual game because you use that information to make decisions, right? But that's the main thing. It's hidden information that compels you to pay attention to it. And that is a core fact of, I think, a lot of JRPGs. I would say most JRPGs, especially any JRPG that I consider a really good one, Earthbound, stuff like that. There are some JRPGs out there that take the opposite approach, the spreadsheet approach, basically, where they're like, we're giving you all the information you could possibly wish for. So now it's a very complex puzzle. Figure it out, buddy. Figure out the answer to this puzzle. Cut this Gordian knot, because you're playing Vagrant Story, which is fine. It is a different kind of design, though. So I want to lay out this thesis statement here that this is one of the most exciting things about any JRPG, even when you're just mashing A in a Final Fantasy VI or whatever. You're collecting info about the game's world by observing what happens, and that forms a relationship between yourself and the game's world that I think is what makes people feel so strongly emotionally attached to these games. There's a reason why people have such strong, passionate love for the genre of games, and I think this is a very, very major part of it, even before you add things on like beautiful characters and music and graphics and stuff like that. So, the end. Thank you for letting me holler about that.
Of course. Speaking of the numbers and stuff, a really cool thing that I love about Dragon Quest is the numbers are all small. Like I said, a slime starts with 3 health. A starting Final Fantasy monster might start with 150, and here it's 3. And so it's really easy to see that if a monster hits you for 5 and another one hits you for 10, you feel that the second one is so much stronger. Versus if one did 2,000 damage and the next one does 3,000 damage, the numbers are so big that you're like, oh, they did a couple thousand damage, and you don't necessarily feel the exact weight of every single digit in the damage calculation.
And you're cutting down those numbers in your head anyway.
Mm-hmm.
When they say 2,000, you're just thinking 2.
Yeah, exactly. And so I really like that the numbers are small, and they've stayed small even as the games got huge. It's not like, oh well, because Dragon Quest 11 is 80 hours long, now you're going to have thousands of HP. No, I haven't beaten the game, so I don't know, but you probably beat the game with like 300 HP compared to
probably something like that, which is where they've been since around Dragon Quest like 3 or 4 or 5.
Yeah. Another thing that's super interesting, and I mentioned it vaguely, is Dragon Quest 1 came out before Final Fantasy had context sensitive buttons. So that's one thing that Final Fantasy definitely did right, is that the A button is your do button, because here, if you want to go through a door, you got to use door. If you want to go through the stairs, you got to hit stairs. And
you know how in Zelda 1, you see the little stair tile and you literally just walk your ass into it and then it goes tuk, 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 and you take in the stairs. Yeah, this, you got to walk your ass over it and then hit A and then navigate to stairs and then hit A again. I will say people far over exaggerate how unfun or clunky this is. It takes like 2 seconds, and no, it takes a lot less than 2 seconds. It takes like 2 moments. And I think it's charming. It's cute. Don't let that make you not play the game. That's just silly.
Yeah. And if you play on the iOS version, which me and Maddy are both saying that's the version that you should play, you get a context sensitive button anyways.
Oh, I actually did want to mention that. If you just want to play a nice, fun game, sure, go for it. If you're a real head and you find what we're saying very compelling and really want to know like what we're really talking about, I would highly recommend you find a way, to whatever means you feel like, you know what I'm talking about, to acquire the original game. And this isn't just me being a stickler, okay? So much of this game is player directed. So much of this game is about losing and then learning, that by making it quite a bit easier as far as like making the numbers go down, it actually can hurt the design a little bit, because if you're reducing all the enemies' damage, then I don't know, the difference between the scorpions to the east and the metal scorpions to the west isn't as big of a difference. So you might not realize. In fact, you might accidentally, because they drastically increase the amount of experience you get from battles, you might just in the course of beating some Drakis get enough XP to go over to the west instead. So it does kind of break, not horrendously break the game, for the record. Like, again, I'm not going to go super hard on this, but if you find yourself interested intellectually in what we're trying to convey and want to really experience it for yourself, highly recommend playing the original version of the game. That way you're getting that full understanding of the full reality of the vibe of the critical, of the formalistic reality of what we're discussing, instead of just like having a fun time with it. I want to put a pretty strong recommendation there, and I would not, for the record, I'm not putting the strong recommendation on any other game in the series. Maybe 3. Any other game, just play whatever version you feel like, it's fine.
Yeah, I think of it like this. If you want to do your JRPG homework, play the iOS version. If you want to do some JRPG research, play the NES version.
That's a pretty good way to put it. Yeah. It's like it's like reading the spark notes of a book that is in fact really, really good. Like, buddy, you can read the spark notes of the Grapes of Wrath, but dude, the prose is so good.
Yeah, and like none of the changes to the iOS version break any of the stuff. The NES just does it better. So you still will get all of the information that you need to, but like you can feel the good crunchiness of it on the NES version.
Yeah, so that's a great way to put it. It's just not quite as crunchy. They make it where the flavor doesn't come out. The flavor doesn't come through quite as strong. And therefore you're not going to have your palate quite as attuned to what's going on.
Yeah. So as a final wrap up, I normally would say if I want to go back and complete the game, and I will be cheeky and say yes, I want to go back and complete Dragon Quest, because like Maddie said, the game is so short and it's such a like spiritual thing to actually play it, that like I'm feeling bad, I'm going to play Dragon Quest today, and then I won't feel as bad level game for me. So of course I'm going to play the rest of it, because I will probably play it about 60 more times before I die. But so instead of me trying to pre-review the rest of the game I haven't played, I will just reiterate, definitely play this game. If you are listening to the series, you either Google Dragon Quest and you happen upon this on Spotify, or you are one of our normal listeners who already loves JRPGs, and this game is invaluable in learning what a JRPG is and how a lot of things in JRPGs came about, even if some of them are vestigial at this point. Like the world map is great and I love it, but also a lot of games just instead give you cool places to go in between, and that's really cool too.
That actually was one of the final comments I wanted to make. Not a long speech, just a sentence. Is that this is one of the few JRPGs where the main action is on the world map. It has dungeons, but all the stuff we're talking about that's so compelling, the game as she is played, is traversing the world map, which maybe preceded, I would say that continued to be the case maybe in Dragon Quest 2 and 3, maybe even 4 to a slightly lesser extent. But then by the time you get to 5, it's like every other JRPG was like, oh, the world map is just a thing that you use to get from one interesting place to another. So seeing that transition is a very interesting. It's just another cool little fact about Dragon Quest 1 that is something that a lot of people just would not even ever be aware that was how the games used to be.
Yeah. I also recommend this game if somehow your search engine optimization is way off and you searched for ketogenic muffin recipes and they served you up this podcast, because like being everyone's first JRPG, this is literally baby's first JRPG. The iOS version is cheap. It's super user friendly. It has the lowest barrier to entry. And I think you, the hypothetical you that somehow made it over an hour into a podcast and not know what a video game is, you would enjoy this game. I honestly 100% believe that. It's very crunchy and has a lot of things for real heads like me and Maddie, but it also it's Scarlett's first RPG. She's currently playing the Game Boy Color version to teach herself more reading, and she does great at it.
Gosh, that game's got some good graphics.
If you don't play the iOS version and you don't want to go back to the very original, highly recommend the Game Boy Color. Its localization is way off compared to what everything we said today, so it'll be brand new for you and you won't have any spoilers, but it's real good and real pretty.
Definitely got the most graphics. I wasn't gonna get into it, but since we're doing this, I will say don't get the Switch version. It's just hideous. You probably don't realize it if you probably wouldn't know this until you start playing it, but they added all this awful pixel smoothing to it. I bought it because I love Dragon Quest, and it made me really depressed. So if you want to play some version of the game that's convenient on a modern device, just play it on iOS.
Yeah.
I hate to be so repetitive, but a lot of people don't like playing games on their phone. They're like, no, I should play it on a real console, but like for real, just play it on iOS. It's great.
And most people don't like playing on it because touch controls are bad. The touch controls for all of the Dragon Quest games, 1 through 6, are all on iOS. They're fantastic. It's the best.
It's quite weird how good a job they do with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. So if after all of this you're thinking, but Sam, I don't want to play this game, I leave you with the famous words of Princess Gwaelin herself, but thou must. So thanks for listening, everybody. If you have games that you think I should try out, you can commission new episodes of the JRPG Canon over on our website at www.rpgbook.club. It can be literally anything. Like, I know it's the JRPG Canon, but you can put a RPG on there. Like, you can put something that's only kind of an RPG on there. You could put a walking sim. Like we said, adventure games.
The episode will be good. I mean, no, we can guarantee we'll do our best. We can't guarantee that it will make sense for us to talk about that game given the premise of this series. But if you think it would make sense for some whatever the hell reason, then okay, you probably know something. You obviously know something.
Yeah, like one of my original things was on Paper Mario Sticker Star, that after playing Paper Mario Sticker Star, I realized is a platform game that has fairly deterministic JRPG battles tacked onto it. It is a platformer exploration game, not really a JRPG. And I covered it anyways.
That game is a graphical adventure game with puzzles and platforming. Actually, I didn't know you did that, Sam. That's a great example of a game that has a lot to say about it really makes you think, what the fuck is an RPG?
Yeah. And the main thing I want to do is, a lot of people like to argue, is Zelda an RPG or not? For the sake of this podcast, absolutely, because Portopia Serial Murder Case is an RPG for the things of this podcast. So
I'm
adventure games,
because it's a Sam's thing and not mine. So he can say that.
I agree with both sides. My actual answer to is Zelda an RPG or not is that's a bad question, and if you ask it, you don't understand video games. But but for the sake of, I don't know if this counts, it probably counts. Err on the side of, ask us to do it anyways. If we have to stretch why the Secret of Monkey Island belongs in the JRPG canon, we'll do it. It actually does belong because Anachronox belongs, and Anachronox doesn't exist without Secret of Monkey Island.
Nailed it. So, you got it. I was actually curious about that, but you're totally right.
Yeah. So if you have a game you want us to cover, head on over to www.rpgbook.club. Under the commission section, you can commission an episode. Drop in anything goes. If you want to hear me talk about JRPGs with a more focus on the story, head on over to literally any other episode of this in this podcast feed. We mostly only focus on story and get to talk about gameplay very little, so it was very fun to talk about a lot of gameplay stuff today. But thanks for listening. I'll see you guys soon. I've been Sam Allman,
and I've been Maddy Grace Webbon.
See you later, folks.
Bye, dorks.